Hello, well it is a glorious spring day here in the kitchen garden and it's actually really toasty in the greenhouse. So we're at the end of March now, just a couple of days to go until April, and this video might actually come out in April, but either way I've got quite a few things to sow today, and next month we're going to be getting into the time when we can start some of the tender things off, the sweet corn and the beans. But I'm probably a little bit behind with the sowing. I would have liked to get some of this done a week or so ago. So today I've got plenty to get on with. So the first thing I'm going to do are the winter squashes and the melons. So I've already sown cucumbers and summer squash, and I think most of those have germinated now. One or two still to come through, but they're doing fine. Now I'm going to use the same sowing mix that I used for those. This is quite a free draining mix, plenty of horticultural grit, and that's because the melons and the squash don't like to sit in soggy compost. So I'm going to start the squash off in reasonable sized pots. These are, I think, 9 centimetre square pots, and I'm not doing too much in seed trays. I've got a few things I will start off in trays, but I've got so much pricking out and potting on to do. I want to start these in reasonable size pots so I don't have to worry about them. So I've got a number of different varieties here. I've got the labels ready to go. The first one, I'm not actually expecting this to germinate necessarily. This is some really old seed, but it's if I'm pronouncing it right, it's Whangaparaoa crown. So this is a crown squash from New Zealand. It's a lovely grey squash, and it's related to, I believe, the hybrid Crown Prince. I think this might be one of the squash from which that was raised. So I'm going to sow 2 pots of these, and I'm going to put 3 or 4 seeds. How many have I got? Yeah, I've got 8 seed here, so I will sow 4 in each pot. I may or may not get anything germinate from these because this seed is so old, but well, you never know. Sometimes these seeds come good even after a long time. So I'm just planting those on their sides so that water drains off of them, and I'll just top them up with a little bit more compost. So next I've got Waltham Butternut. Well, that's not going to germinate. And I will sow, I think, 4 pots of these. Just 2 seed per pot. These are fresh seed. And then I'll thin those to the strongest specimen, again sticking them on their edges. And next I've got one of the Hubbard squash. This is the blue Hubbard. Now these are pretty big squash. I'm only going to sow 3 pots of these. And finally I have Delicata. Now we often sow sweet dumpling, and that is related to Delicata. This one is rather older. Well, this should make a very nice squash indeed. the fruits of Delicata will be rather smaller, and that's quite convenient. So we do like squash with some of the smaller fruits. The Hubbard will be huge potentially, but Delicata will be a useful size. Right, so these just need a drop of water, and then I will move these into one of the propagators. I've still got a little bit of space left, not a lot, but enough for these, and I will need to keep those nice and warm. Because of course these will not germinate in cool conditions, and they certainly won't survive a frost. So if you've seen any of my other videos, you might be wondering where on earth we're going to put all of these squash plants. And I think they don't fit here. We've got a border where we're going to put some of them. I think we could get maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 there. And we've got another bed where we might put a couple of the Delicata. But the rest of them will go out on what we call the dirty compost heap. So we've got a compost heap now outside of the kitchen garden where we put things like grass clippings. Now, we don't exactly have a nice lawn. What we have is some weedy, rough ground. So we mow that, but I'm sure those clippings are full of weed seeds, and I don't want to spread that in the kitchen garden. So they go out there, and then any time we're weeding or digging plants out that have bad roots or are looking a bit seedy, that all goes onto the dirty heap. Now, there's no way I'm going to then spread any compost from there inside the kitchen garden. I'm sure it's not getting hot enough to kill off those seeds. So the last thing I want to do is spread that compost here and create a mass of weed growth. So that compost is just kind of sitting there, and there's probably enough there now to make use of. So what I'll do is I'll put some of the spare squash plants into reasonable sized pots with the bottoms removed and sit them on the dirty compost heap, and they can root down into that, and we'll see how that goes. But I suspect that's going to be a great way of growing some more winter squash in an area that we're not really using. So yeah, that's the plan. So next I have my melons. So I've got 4 old varieties of melon, and I'm planning to put 2 plants each into 4 of the cold frames. So I've got these 6-cell trays here, so there's quite a lot of compost in each one of those, and I'm going to sow 2 seeds of each into 3 cells, and that'll give me 1 spare plant in case one of them doesn't do so well, or if I can find a hole for it somewhere else. So the first one is Prescott Fond Blanc. So again, I'm just setting these on edge. They're a little bit more fiddly because the seed are smaller. The next is Petit Gris de Rennes. So all of these melon seeds have come from Thomas Etty, and they're one of the few places that sell some of the old varieties. So next I have Sucrin de Tours. And finally, Blenheim Orange. So just a drop of water, and they can then go in the propagator as well. Next up is basil. Now I need quite a few basil plants, and I'm going to start those in these fairly large cells. These should be good enough to grow them on, hopefully, until I get to plant the basil out into the greenhouses. If not, I will have to pot them on, but I would like to avoid that if I possibly can. I'll just firm them down a little in the centre. I want a little pinch of seed in each one, 3 or 4, 5, something like that will be fine. And I will plant these out in clumps in between the tomatoes, or in and around the tomatoes. And if you keep up with pinching them out or harvesting the plants, you can keep them going for a pretty long time. So these should give me a really good supply through the summer. So next I want one pot with some lovage. Now this grows into rather a large plant. I've got a ridiculous number of seeds in this packet. There's 1,000 seeds and I only want a couple of those. But that's okay. I will sow a few. Make sure I get something. So next I have some Alpine strawberry seeds. Now this seed packet has been in the freezer for 2 to 3 weeks, something like that. And hopefully that will help break the dormancy of these seeds. So I'm just going to start these off in a seed tray. I'll fill that lightly to begin with. And then I will tamp that down. And I'll give that a good soaking. Strawberry seed, as well as enjoying a period of cold, also likes light in order to germinate. So I'm going to do with these exactly as I did with the celeriac seeds I sowed a while back. I'm just going to broadcast these across the surface of the compost. Well, that should be plenty. They're not always the most eager to germinate, but I think that should be plenty of seed. And I'm not going to put any compost on top of these. I'm just going to press these down lightly into the surface of the compost, and that's all I'm going to do with them. Now I will mist the surface of the compost from time to time to keep it nice and moist. I haven't picked up too many seeds there, that's fine. What do I do with the label? And I've got a little lid here which I can cover them with if need be, just to keep the moisture in there. That will do quite nicely. So next I've got some Seakale, and I'm just going to start that off in this tray. I don't have so many seeds of that. And I will be growing these plants on to force next year. So these are quite large seeds. Right, I will prick them out and pop them on as soon as they're a reasonable size. So next on my list is sorrel, and I'm going to start off 4 pots of each of 2 sorts. So I've got the ordinary sorrel, and then I've got a red veined sorrel. Just going to put a few seeds in each pot, just a little cluster, that's more than enough. Right, that's fine. So now I'm just sowing some small pots with chives. Just a pinch of seed in each pot, and then I'll plant these out as clumps later on. And again, small pots, this time with Chervil. So just a little pinch of seed in each pot. And the last thing for today is oregano, and I just want 4 pots of that. And I'm just going to tap in just a few seeds into each pot. These are very fine seeds. And then just a very light covering of compost over those. So that's the final sowing of March completed. There's quite a lot to get through today, but next month I'll be into sweet corn, the French beans, undoubtedly further sowings of peas, more salads and so on. But that's all for today's video, so thanks very much for watching and bye for now.